so we can post. As you can imagine, there's much interest in the community on the future of Old Tucson. So we will be posting this, and I'll send the link later on the attractions and tourism site, so those who are interested can watch. The task force was formed by Mr. Huckleberry as the current leaseholders resigned their lease effective September 14th. The county has taken it over. We'll talk a little bit about what is and isn't happening, but I think if we can start out first, I'll open some mics, and if you give a brief introduction of yourself, that would be helpful for everyone on. So let's start with our guest. Brent, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. Sorry, good afternoon, everyone. Brent DeRod, I'm the president and CEO of Visit Tucson.
And Scott, how about you? Need to open your mic.
How's that?
Better, thank you.
Okay. As I started to say, I'm old, I'm retired, I write a column, I'm a historian, and I've been a movie aficionado of Westerns for too long, very much too long.
Well, welcome, thank you. Daryl?
Glad to be here.
Hi, Daryl Mallet. I'm a producer at Caribou Moving Pictures and chair of the Arizona Film Expo.
Perfect, thank you. Chris?
I'm Chris Caroline. I'm the director of Pima County Natural Resource Parks and Recreation. Old Tucson Studios sits somewhere within the 21,000 acres here that we manage as Tucson Mountain Park.
And how about Nancy Cole?
Hi, I'm Nancy. I work with our project management office. I'm a registered architect. And so my background is with a lot of Pima County properties, a lot of the people who are here, and helping build infrastructure and build dreams, I guess we'll say.
Rini?
I'm Rini Ochoa. I'm the director of the Keno Sports Complex.
Great. Terry?
Hi, I'm Terry Spencer, and I'm the division manager in the procurement department for the design and construction division, and will help the process for the procurement on this project.
Great, thank you. How about Matt?
Hi, I'm Matt Sage. I'm a procurement officer, also with Pima County Procurement Design and Construction Division. Thank you.
And Jeff?
Hi, I'm Jeff Teplitsky. I'm the manager of Pima County Real Property Services. I'm a certified general real estate appraiser, and I'll bring that discipline and my knowledge to this project.
Carmine?
Good afternoon, Carmine DeBonis. I'm a deputy county administrator. I have the public works department, so several represented here today with natural resources, parks and recreation, Keno Stadium District. Both Jeff and Nancy's groups are part of the public works family, and then we've got some other small departments like wastewater and transportation and environmental quality, development services, full range of different stuff, regional flood control district, so quite involved in a number of different disciplines.
Is that all, Carmine?
Today.
And Kirk?
Can you hear me?
Now we can, yes.
Okay. Kirk Blondeau, former employee at Old Tucson for long term, and now with Pima County, and hope to have some good things come to Old Tucson.
Perfect. Thank you all. So as I said, Mr. Huckleberry, at his direction, we put together a task force for the future of Old Tucson. There is much interest in the community. We have been taking all the phone calls, letters, emails, all the information, and we have about just under 300 comments. And as you can imagine, a lot of people want to tell us what to do, what we should do, how it should be managed. So by having the property back, it always has belonged to Pima County, but we're now providing security. The site, let me just tell you a little bit, the site is currently closed. Pima County is providing security, maintenance, and upkeep. It's a valuable piece of property for us and for the residents of Pima County. So our goal is to keep it secure, and in the next period of time, figure out what is the best use of the property moving forward. How do we honor culturally the natural resources of the property, the history of the property, or there are other alternatives that might be used for the benefit of Pima County residents, but also for tourism. So that's what we'll be talking about a little bit today. We won't get everything done, but at least we hope we'll pick your brains and have you contribute some information to us. We will start, I think, because I know Brent has to leave to go to another meeting. As CEO of Visit Tucson, he's been very involved in looking at the property and what it brings to tourism, and was asked to provide a little bit of information background, what he's seen as we work our way through COVID, which is a whole other story, but as an attraction what we might do in the future to the benefit. So Brent, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Thanks, Diane. Yeah, a couple of thoughts that we had here at Visit Tucson. Again, I can't think of a more scenic location, for whatever use this ends up being. One of the thoughts that we had is, perhaps to put out a request for proposals, looking for operators to come in with thoughts and ideas in terms of best use for the site. Just to ask a clarifying question, I think I know the answer to this, but I'm assuming that Pima County would retain ownership of the parcel under any and all circumstances. Is that correct?
Yes.
But there would be an opportunity, perhaps through a long-term lease, similar to like what was the case with Old Tucson, for somebody to come in and create, any variety of opportunities out there as we move forward. Okay. A couple of the thoughts that we had out there as well in terms of, especially from a tourism perspective, the opportunity to maybe take a look at a boutique hotel. One of the things we looked at was maybe having horseback riding, offering some Old West experiences on the parcel. There's certainly in place out on the east side a bike ranch, looking at, again, whether it's a bike ranch or looking at just an outdoor experience hub. One of the things that we've seen, here in Tucson that really draws visitors coming in is that opportunity to hike and cycle, horseback ride, really experience the Sonoran Desert in the outdoors. And whether it's just kind of creating an outdoor hub or, perhaps something a little bit more formal like a bike ranch type of concept, that could be there as well. The other aspect is always to take a look at the film history as well. Certainly when we take a look at just what's been in place in terms of a lack of statewide film incentives, that's something that has really, I think, hurt our cause in terms of moving forward as a film destination, especially for large feature films that require some type of refundable tax credits out there as well. Don't know what the upcoming election will hold, if that would change things potentially here in the state or not. However, just looking at again, film, we hate to let that go. We still get $8 to $9 million in direct spending on the television front annually. We'd love to see that be more. Don't want to give up necessarily on the film aspects of it, but I'm just trying to look realistically at some of the other opportunities as well that could either complement or perhaps replace film. Thanks.
Thanks, Brent. Daryl, do you want to, I saw lots of head nodding there. Do you want to follow up a little bit with some of your thoughts about film and reality, theatrical production and smaller productions?
Thanks, Diane. Yeah, I was gonna say you just stop at reality because the what we want to do with film and reality are still this far apart from each other. So no, Brent's right. We definitely want to examine the opportunities for film tourism. The movie Deliverance was filmed in 1972. The county that it was filmed in last year pulled in $47 million in film tourism alone, and their entire county budget is 17 million. So they have excess every year, and wouldn't we love that here in our county? So, I'm not sure what that looks like yet because I'm not in, conventions and visitors bureau. I don't do that sort of thing, but Brent's on the right track. I think, maybe a hotel that would draw people. One of the things that we're doing with the city of Nogales, and I was discussing this with Mayor Rothschild, I haven't had a chance to meet with the new mayor yet because she took office and then COVID happened, right? So was to set up city and county level incentives while we wait for the state to catch up. So the mayor of Nogales is rolling out a program with us to bring a $1 million film into his town. So that's something we can look at too, is some sort of county level. It doesn't have to be tax rebates or tax returns or whatever but there could be something that we could offer in line with Matthew Earl Jones and the Arizona Commerce Authority, the program that they're working on called Real Savings, where we just get vendors that are willing to come alongside and partner. So there's a lot of opportunities there. I had, before the task force was formed, I'd heard rumors that Diamond was going to be pulling out. And so I'd already reached out to Knott's Berry Farm and Disneyland and Columbia Pictures and people that I know in the film and entertainment industry to see what the interest level was. And there is intrigue by many of those companies. Obviously, Disney and Knott's and Six Flags are struggling just like, we are here in the county. And then also I talked with Ron Howard and Tyler Perry last week as well, and let them know that it was available and that they should watch for it. So there is intrigue and interest in all of this. So we have a lot of options depending on what you all decide that we're doing.
Okay. And Scott, do you want to talk to us a little bit about the Western history and some comments you may have on Old Tucson?
Yeah, I've reached out well before this group was formed, and I belong to the Western Writers Association, for example, which has a lot of notables there. I've contacted, because I've done research for some of them, and I've contacted 40 or 50 of them, and they're all behind this. That doesn't mean they're going to open their checkbook, of course, but they're all behind this, and they want to see it. They're ready to give whatever publicity to us that they can muster. I know that we're at step 1, and that's step 3 or 4, and the amount of people like old Ben Trawick, who is known internationally. He's the historian emeritus down in Tombstone. He's 93. He's a dear friend, and he wrote me about how because he had so many contacts up there, including John Wayne, etc., and he's got pictures all over his wall. Because any movie was made about Tombstone, obviously old Ben was consulted. So you have a lot of backing from people that may or may not carry some weight. And it was touched on about movie theaters. Last year I did an interview, I turned it into a column. I wrote a column with Angie Dickinson, and the interview was done up in Old Tucson last year. And I wrote Angie a letter. I've not heard back from her. But, it's just a question of if you can get some Hollywood people who are interested in this and get their name behind this. I don't know where we're going. I don't know if anybody else does. But my initial thoughts was, if you can preserve this and turn it into the film capital of the world, the Western film capital of the world. I don't know how you do that. I don't know structure, but it seems like a good starting point.
Okay, appreciate that. Reedy, do you want to talk a little bit about, obviously with Keno Complex, you're running a attendance-based facility, and any thoughts you might have on tourism and attendance and sporting events, because there's been some suggestions that it could be a site of, I know, Chris, I can hear you screaming already, motocross, rodeo, all kinds of sporting events. So you may want to comment a little bit on that, Rainey.
Well, I think it's got a myriad of uses. I mean, it's kind of like Keno out here. Don't think of it as just, you know, a historic Western facade and facility, but what can it be? I mean, there's the opportunity for corporate and company rentals out there for, you know, annual awards or banquets or such. You know, not that I want to lose them, but our friends the Centurions have been out there before. I think there's the opportunity for outdoor concerts. I'm pretty limited during the nice weather like we're having this week, where I'm full up with baseball and soccer. I really can't fit a concert in, but there is the space, there's the parking. You know, you can set up gem show tents out there depending on, you know, where the flattest area is. You've got wonderful parking. I agree that although the casino's fairly close by for a hotel, it's still a ways. And if you had a smaller hotel property right there, I think that would attract quite a few. I'm not going to get into, you know, motocross or anything like that, but the rodeo is another unique opportunity that if it was done right, I mean, we got the rodeo grounds here in the city, but it's used basically twice a year. And if you developed some equestrian events, as was, you know, discussed by Brent earlier, I think you could have a really neat venue and opportunity that if someone isn't limited to their vision of it just being Old West and, you know, opening themselves up to whatever space is there to be used, I think it's got a lot of potential out there.
Okay. Carmine, do you want to speak a little bit to, there are some restrictions on the property based on its location, Tucson Mountain Park, 360 acres, 180 are proper Old Tucson, but then there's a whole nother area. So we are dealing with some restrictions and what we can and can't do, along with the location, how you get to the location, the proximity to Gilbert Ray Campground. Carmine, you may want to speak a little bit to some of that, and then we'll move to Chris and the process. And
sure, and I think, you know, geographically where it's situated, you know, we all understand the Tucson Mountain Park and the value of that amenity, and really the view of, you know, the community and the residents in terms of its setting in and surrounded by pristine desert. I think that, you know, it's important for us maybe not to so much look at limitations of the property and the surroundings at this point. I think the obvious ones are there. You know, Gates Pass Road is one that doesn't accommodate well high volumes of traffic and in and out is a challenge along Gates Pass Highway, but that doesn't mean that on different events and you know, activities out there that we couldn't craft traffic plans and utilize shuttles and other ride you know, sharing type of approaches to minimize some of that. So, you know, I think really that some of the things that took place out there, most notably Nightfall, right? That was a big attendance draw. I think that that should be something that is looked to be preserved and maybe expanded upon. I know that they've had other themed events, and whether, you know, we look to do it or ask people for ideas and input around seasonal things. So, you know, not to steal, you know, things from Rainy, you've got, you know, World of Lights out there, and I'm not suggesting that that event is well suited for this venue, but is there some type of holiday, winter seasonal holiday event type of draw? I know that they drew upon the steampunk crowd, and there's got to be an probably endless supply of eclectic types of uses that could take place out there. I think that if we look towards other destination and theme parks, I mean, they cater to different clientele. So looking at the gay, lesbian, bi, transsexual community, and themed events out there. I mean, those potentially have some opportunity for hosting of events out there. I think the other thing that may present well at that facility are non-contact typed theme tournament events. So Diane, you and I have talked about, wouldn't it be great to attract national cornhole tournament? I mean, what better setting out there? What if we had the ability to get the interest of Food Network? I mean, I know they have the what is it, the chef competition one where they chopped, right? That's what it's called. And they've done barbecue or smoker themed events, right? I mean, that might be an option. Could we get interest from national horseshoe tournament events, dart throwing events, right? Things that would be along, the venue, that type of venue, billiards. I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there, but things that could be performed either indoors or outdoors, and would draw some national attention to it, where this position or this facility is positioned in the beautiful Southwest desert. So those types of activities, are there multiple themed types of attractions that could be hosted out there? I mean, there's certainly the Western, I think the movie aspect of it can be accommodated alongside any of these other things. I mean, really, what can we do to fill the slate of scheduling out there 360, as close to 365 days a year as possible? So, I think really, opening this broadly and trying to brainstorm, both the expected and non-expected, or traditional and non-traditional type of activities out there, really would serve us well at this early stage of the discussion.
Okay. Daryl, I saw your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Oh no, I was nodding my head the whole time Carmine was talking, because that's some of the stuff that we were thinking about too. And you don't want to pitch this as just a film destination because of the lack of support from the state, and because of you guys know all the reasons. But this is exactly what we were thinking: is you have a venue that has multiple uses, exactly what you guys all just said, what everybody just said. Where you have the sports, you retain the Old Tucson, Carmine, there's a national gunslingers competition too, where they do they throw the coins in the air and they shoot at them. And there's all kinds of stuff. So I think you guys are absolutely on the right track with all of this so far. This is great.
When you said gunslingers, it made me think also lumberjacks. We need a lumberjack tournament up there.
Yes.
Chop wood, right?
The axe throwing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chop wood.
Yeah. This is great.
This is why we have task force, because we come up with all kinds of ideas and possibilities. Nancy, do you want to go next? I know we talked about all kinds of different things that were coming in through suggestions to use. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you've seen or ideas that you heard of?
Sure. I think, one thing I just want to point out, so we're brainstorming a lot of ideas, but one of the things that's been successful in the past is also tying what those ideas are to our kind of economic and community goals that are already posted in our Pima Prospers and our economic development plan. So we need to kind of keep that in mind too. And a lot of that can come out of some of the discussion today. But then, you know, I have Nancy's crazy list of things too. And so I'm going to add on to this a little bit. I loved hearing the bike ranch and ties to our biking, hiking community. I like having the horse connections for that. I think we should tie in camping, glamping, horse camping. There's lots of opportunity for having the Old Tucson proper support a lot of activities that are much more private and located somewhat separately, so that you have these multi-events. And then how do you tie in all of our other regional attractions that we have? You know, how do you point out that you can also go to Tanque Verde Guest Ranch, or you can go have some kind of special experience at the Desert Museum? You know, maybe we tie in a special early or late component. You come here, you stay here, but you also get treated special at the Desert Museum. So, you know, how do we get a volunteer experience in the national parks where you come and you stay here and you volunteer there, or you volunteer on our side with trail development? You know, so I don't know. There's a lot of really different opportunities. I keep tying it back to our Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan, our sustainability goals, our you know, low impact, but kind of, you know, I'm going to say in a COVID world, we're all looking to get somewhere, do something different, but not really see anybody else. You know, can we take advantage of that in today's economy? So some of those kind of, and I love the food. You know, I'm a foodie, so we have UNESCO, we have so much people we can bring in from the reservation or farm to table or any of those kind of things that would be really interesting. So obviously I'm not in one location at all. I'm kind of all over the boards. But I missed the gunslinger, so I definitely wrote that down.
Chris, do you want to jump in there also, just talk a little bit about compatibility of the acreage, some of the limitations, water, some of those things? I know we've had a lot of ideas about, let's put a water park in. You may want to talk about, you know, some of those limitations or concerns or thoughts that you may have.
Yeah, I can, you know, I was going to take actually a little bit broader perspective, because I look at Old Tucson Studios in the area of the leasehold, sort of right in the heart of Tucson Mountain Park. Like I said early on, you know, it's 21,000 acres and it's a huge park. And then it's right on the edge of Saguaro National Park as well. So there's a real natural element that sort of Nancy was alluding to with the outdoor activities and those kind of things, which I think are really, really critical to retain. The interesting thing too, I think, is that, but it has probably the best opportunity as events central for Tucson Mountain Park. One of the things that I've looked at some of our other park sites, which are our flagship sites, which are our evolving sites like Canoa Ranch, Agua Caliente Park, some of these other sites that we have, they all have a destination kind of visitor center to go to. Tucson Mountain Park really doesn't have such a thing. You know, and that was always a little bit perplexing to me, why we don't have really a landing spot. We have multiple landing spots in Tucson Mountain Park. And I know we have the visitor center downtown and everything, but I think having something geographically, strategically located within the heart of Tucson Mountain Park is probably a really good idea as a landing spot for folks, okay? You know, to come to the park, to learn about what's in the park, you know, the Sonoran Desert, you know, Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum. You've got a small city right across the street seasonally with the Gilbert Wright Campground, where a lot of people are there. You know, more and more people are buying RVs in this physically distant world that we're inhabiting these days. You have shooting ranges, you have archery ranges, you have Desert Discovery Center, you have lots of hiking trails. You have just a myriad of activities and those kind of things. So I think it'd be nice to sort of pull that together in one spot and start off with something of a landing area. And I think Old Tucson, because of the nature of how it's laid out, the heart of the, you know, at Kinney Road and Gates Pass coming together right there, it's sort of right in a spot which presents an opportunity, I think, to create it as a landing spot, and then that landing spot with some of the other amenities that people are talking about, you know, whether it's boutique kind of things and, you know, boutique hotel, kind of restaurant, those kind of things right in that location, whether it's a snack bar or whatever, but also as event central. Again, you have a lot of disturbed area, but a lot of parking. And quite frankly, most of Tucson Mountain Park is highly undisturbed. Okay, so, and I don't think there's much of a desire on anybody's part to disturb it much more. I think there's a real push to try to keep it as pristine as possible. You know, we've been developing quite a network of trails throughout the park and that kind of thing, both for mountain biking. We've gotten a lot of inquiries over the years about races and running races, mountain biking races. You know, there's certain races that actually occur through Tucson Mountain Park. And oftentimes Old Tucson Studios, given its location and everything, may be a origination spot or an ending spot for a particular race or activity. So those kind of things always come into play. Certainly we have limitations on, you know, some of the utilities. We finally got a bit of cell phone service out there in the last couple of years. Quite a good thing, and we've heard about it from, you know, people at Gilbert Ray who are pretty happy. The water system, we do have a well that's been in place for quite some time. The water line is not in the best location ideally out there, but it does provide a significant amount of water. Most of that goes to the Desert Museum. We operate that well, and the storage, most of it goes, as I say, to the Desert Museum. Old Tucson gets a lot of water as well, and Gilbert Ray gets a smaller amount of water. So, I mean, there's just all the events that people have been talking about. Yeah, and the filming, I mean, those are all great ideas, and I think we can still entertain those kind of things. I don't know that, the only thing I would sort of say is and suggest is that maybe this is something of a centralized landing spot that we create for people who come to the park, and then we can advertise it as such. Land here, okay, and then you can, you know, learn about the entirety of the park, and you can go to the different locations within the park.
Okay, good, thanks. Terry and then Matt, do you want to take us through the procurement process a little bit and explain how we'll go about this and, you know, a little bit what's involved with that?
Sure, Diane. I can take the lead on this and then Matt can chime in, of course. We're going to follow our Arizona revised statutes and our procurement code for a qualifications-based selection process. And we'll publish a solicitation for qualifications and a request for proposal for what we would think would be an attractions operator. And we envision that this would be a two-step process. And the SOQ, or the solicitation statement of qualifications, would consider qualifications and experience and approach for an economically sustainable attraction for our community. And then the RFP portion, or request for proposal portion, would consider an operating plan and the resulting lease agreement. So we would work together with our group to devise a schedule. We're working on a preliminary schedule right now to put this all together. And Matt and I would be the focus, the point of contact for that activity.
Matt?
I don't think I have anything additional to add. I think Terry summarized it quite nicely.
Okay. Jeff, do you want to talk a little bit about real property and
Sure.
what you're looking for and looking at?
Well, first of all, as you point out in the notes that you sent earlier, there's 360 acres of land there, of which approximately 180 are developed with Old Tucson. So I see this as more of a repurposing of Old Tucson, maybe adding something that makes it more viable, more attractive to the film industry, to the television industry. And then you have a whole other side of it, whether you want to bring that to the SFQ or the SOQ at the same time, or is it a separate, sort of a separate look at what else could go out there? And what I see from hearing what Chris talked about and Nancy, I see an ecotourism kind of component that, because you've got this, as you say, thousands of acres of park adjacent, you've got a unique location, it's beautiful out there. And I think that from if somebody wants to put a boutique hotel out there, does that attract, or casitas, much like they talked about on the Far East side with the bike ranch? This is an interesting opportunity to do both ecotourism and outdoor activities, which can include road races, bike races, other activities that attract people to come to those kinds of environments. In particular, I think that being proximate to that many acres of open space is a unique element. And whether that folds into who might want to operate what's there at Old Tucson versus what could be developed on the adjacent property. Now, I'm not aware of the infrastructure needs out there at this point, whether there's enough water, waste, facilities, things like that. But there's an opportunity possibly for expansion of the idea beyond just Old Tucson as an attraction. Maybe it's that area as an ecotourist location as well. What do I do? What I'm looking for is to figure out, how are you going to structure a lease? What is it going to be based on? I was not, obviously that lease was written 25, 30 years ago, the original one. I'm not aware of how it was put together, what were the parameters, but going forward, yeah, we want to be sure that we're being compensated appropriately. We have to follow, obviously, the statutes as well in order to create a sustainable and viable lease opportunity out there for someone.
Okay. A couple of things. I know I've been asked some of the attendance and what was happening at Old Tucson. In its heyday, Old Tucson was reporting about 500,000 visitors. Now that was back in the day, and the latest figures showed them somewhere around 150,000 visitors a year. Their largest event was Nightfall because it was held over a full month. Obviously, that produced a lot of their income. So when they were unable to do that over COVID, it limited them. And then, Kirk, you're on the phone. You might talk a little bit, if you will. There were other events that were being held out there, some movie shoots, private events, some parties. Just give us a little idea of what kind of events that were also out there.
Yeah, there's quite a few. Definitely the Nightfall was our big one. Steampunk, somebody else brought that up. We did have Chopped out here. Somebody brought that up. They did a whole series that took about 3 weeks to do their barbecue cook-off. But if it was open to the public, I think that's great. Whoever said that, it kind of triggered something to me. But we do a lot of weddings, weddings, corporate parties, stuff like that, team building, stuff like that, but nothing in the large numbers like, a steampunk event or a Nightfall. But it is real exciting to hear that you all understand that it can't be one thing. It's got to be a lot of things. And I do notice that we rely a lot in the past. When I was with Old Tucson, we leaned a lot on the past movies that were filmed here, and historically that's great. You got to have that, I think, just because of what it is and some of the great films that came out of here. But we can't rely solely on film history and filmmaking at the beginning. Now, if the ball keeps rolling, like you guys are saying, and start getting more interest in big films being done in the Pima County area, that's great. I mean, for everybody in Pima County. But yeah, the big events and the big parties have always been the Nightfall stuff. We have done concerts in the past, competing with the indoor venues now with the casinos. It kind of took away from, the heat in Arizona and the wind, and the monsoons and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard in the current layout in the way they used to do concerts. Now, I'm not a concert person, so I'm sure you guys have some great ideas about that. And then the rodeo, our current rodeo arena is kind of small. We've had quite a few rodeo events here that they've had to size it down, like barrel racing. We had Cobra out here, which is a barrel racing outfit. It goes around the area, and they had to do a scaled down version of their normal barrel racing and stuff. So, some minor things that can be definitely fixed. But I think you're all in the going in the right direction, making it a multi-event and connecting it to the whole the rest of the Tucson Mountain Park, like Chris was saying. I mean, to make this a starting and ending point, just because it's got a pretty good. It's right in the center. You come off Gates Pass, Kenny Road. It's kind of like in the center of things. So having it a central area for a launching pad for everything out there is pretty good.
Okay, great, thank you. Scott, can we honor the film history of Old Tucson and add other elements? Is that possible?
Sure. I'm in the process of learning a lot here. Less expounding and more listening is paid off for me. But after all, it's Arizona, it's the desert, it's the West. And if you're going to get people throughout the country to come here, it seems like you've almost got to embrace the theme in some form or fashion. So, I understand this is an economic deal. I was a businessman for a long time, but I still think that you've got to consider how, if possible, you can keep and retain some of what Old Tucson meant throughout the country, if not internationally. I wish I had the answer. I do not, but I still, like I repeat, this is the West. It's the old West. Westerns are out of fashion. They'll come back. They always do. And the mechanics of the tax elements, I'm sure that's important. I've not studied it, but I know my daughter lives in New Mexico, and they make a lot of films there and a lot of films in Canada. Why can't we get some?
King. Daryl, any other thoughts? I know the film, we've gotten a lot of comments. We could be the next Netflix studio as it is in New Mexico. We could do this, we could do that. We purposely, for the task force, requested that no one that's actively looking, we've had a lot of calls just saying, mail me the lease, I'll take a look at it and we'll move forward. That's what we're looking at, is what could it be? What bigger purpose could it serve? And is there really the element for another Netflix studio or another studio here in Arizona without that film incentive?
Yeah, I think there is absolutely that possibility. Like I said, this pilot program that we're working with the mayor of Nogales to not wait for state level incentives. And if you look at a lot of the states that have done it, they've been horribly mismanaged, right? So if we do something like that at the state or county level, it would be up to, at the city or county level, it would be up to, you guys as the administrators of the county to look at the various structures of the different states and pick something that works for you. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's. There was discussion about with Netflix a few months ago about before COVID, about having them come out and build a sister type studio here at Old Tucson to their facility in Albuquerque. There was a lot of support for that at Albuquerque Studios and at MBS3 and Netflix out there. I know that the gal that runs Albuquerque Studios was totally behind it. So there is an opportunity there, and it can look like kind of whatever we want it to look like. But as everybody said, and Jeff was absolutely right. I think it's a two-part structure. We have to figure out what to do with it right now, right? And to preserve what's there. I think any plan that involves raising Old Tucson to the ground, the entire state of Arizona will rise up against that plan, I think. But it has to be a multi-purpose venue. Everybody here has great ideas, TV shows, movies, horseback riding, horse camps, sports. I love all of this, and there's a way to structure it. And I think that having that landing point, like he said, was best, because you've got at least 16 horse ranches around you, White Stallion, Glover Ranch. There's so much. And then the cross-pollination between the Desert Sonoran Museum and Air and Space Museum. And, if they come here for this, will they go to those other things? We already see some crossover, and I don't know if we track those numbers or not, right? But that's perfect. We did that with the Film Expo last year. If you bought a ticket to the Film Expo, Old Tucson gave you $3 off your ticket that weekend. So, there's a lot of partnership. I think you guys are all on the right track. and if we can preserve what we have immediately and then build onto it. So I think it's a two-part SOQ RFP process.
Carmine, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, so Daryl just touched on what I was thinking when he said Film Expo, and I was looking at, right, we've talked about what are the filming opportunities, right, that could take place there, but can we attract events that are film festivals, and can we then marry it with some of these other ideas that came up? So if you could have, right, a glamping setup where you've got undercover or, right, whatever one of these organizers of those luxurious camping settings are, and then marry that with a film festival and really gear it maybe towards a Western theme or a Southwest theme or something independent, right? Artists who are trying to get their films and their short films out there and have them in circulation and viewing. So that was what I was going to suggest too, is that in addition to actual filming activity, could we display then through these expos and festivals and marry it with food and camping and glamping and, you know, all of those types of things. That seems to be a winner in like a fall setting out here. That could be really well received.
Okay. I think the multiple use approach would certainly be something we want to consider because it is an outdoor venue for the main part. So you've got to consider, you know, summer, what events could be done there during the heat, or as we're having now 108 days of over 100 degrees and not a monsoon in sight. The buildings also will remain. They belong to Pima County. What some people don't realize though is after the fire in 95, is that right, Scott? 95?
95.
Some of the original sound studio was not rebuilt, and some of the buildings are simply a front. They're not a full building. So those will remain on property. Any permanent structure will remain as part of the property. So we can certainly think about creative ways to use those or to provide indoor venues, you know, during the heat or inclement weather. There are a couple of advantages that we could have there.
Yeah, Diane, if I can, you're absolutely, again, on the right track. Anybody who's tried to build a quote unquote studio here in Arizona, nobody is interested in that. But if it's a multi-purpose building that could be used as a sound stage, but it could be used for air show or a car show or a wedding or whatever, then it's a win-win because you can use it 365 days a year.
Okay. Certainly for the county, the financial viability is something we'll be looking at, and what we can return to residents and tourists that are in the area. So whatever plan ideas, something we come up with, that's certainly something we'll look at and say, does this make sense? What's the starting point and how do we evolve to that? We know that, you know, we weren't expecting to take over the property, but we've secured it now and we do have it. As I mentioned, we're doing maintenance and upkeep to make sure that that piece of property stays in good shape. And then we'll move forward from there. But I don't see it being a quick process simply because there's so much interest. At some point, if the task force or Mr. Huckleberry requests an ad hoc committee with a certain focus, it could be on film, it could be on Western history. He may ask for that, or you may ask for that, so we get some additional input. And then we'll move forward, you know, with that. We've got all the comments, which we are happy to share with people. We'll redact, you know, names and all that, but there's a whole myriad of concerns, questions, ideas that people are doing. Some of what came in and was repeatedly interesting to me were comments, the history of Old Tucson and how much they loved it and they grew up there and what a wonderful place it was. And then I would ask the question, when was the last time you were there? Well, when I was a kid, we went all the time. I said, okay. And you live in Tucson? When was the last time you were there? And unfortunately, for a lot of people, the answer was, I haven't been there in years.
That's so sad.
The other question we were asking was, when visitors come to the area, to Pima County or to Tucson, is this one of the attractions that you would take people to? And again, the answers there were very interesting. Some were we always go to Old Tucson. Others were not really. No, we've never been there. So if we can find that mix between using the property properly and also making it an attraction or a benefit for residents, I think that's where we're at. Chris, I see you thinking, or what are you, the wheels are spinning.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a magic wand here. I mean, I wish there was and trying to figure it out, but I think the nod to history is absolutely critical, and what we're doing with our parks though, and what we're focusing on our development within our other parks and the facilities, and our conversation with seniors who often have a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of opportunity to move to different places. They really want to be entertained. They like outdoor recreation now. It's a little bit of a different world. And I mean, whereas, historically, excuse the pun, but a lot of people like museums, as far as that. But there's a lot less interest in that from our conversations with some of the people that are around. They're looking for more active recreation. They're looking for the hiking. They're looking for the biking. They're looking for the horseback riding and that kind of thing. They're looking to be entertained. They're looking for nice venues to sit at outdoors in the beautiful desert and that kind of thing, and all these kind of things. And if you can blend that with a good knowledge and perspective on the history, I think that'll make it more attractive, not only to individuals to visit and that kind of thing, but also for companies to have their events and such there, and hopefully for filmmakers to say, hey, this is a pretty good thing. We could use this, to our advantage now, because there's a lot more things that are being added to it. And a lot of people see it now, and it's not just, oh yeah, Old Tucson, that film place from the historical perspective. So you sort of blend the old with the new, and I think that's really the critical thing for developing this thing into the future.
Okay. Nancy, I saw you nodding. What are you thinking?
I loved his last statement. I was typing it. Blend the old and the new. I think that's really where the opportunity lies, because it's great that people have this nostalgia of the old, and we want to cash in on that. But there's a whole growing population here that will have very little interest in that. So how do we get them out there and then share with them that that era or that old time, and bring them in? But it won't capture them initially. We've got to get that other blend to happen, that multiple point focus, in order to bring them in. I think Rini over at Kino has demonstrated that really well. It's not spring training. Kino is everything, and that's where it's become successful. And so we need to keep that in mind.
Daryl?
So Rabun County, which is where Deliverance was filmed, they didn't cash in like just exactly what you just said. And of course, I'm drawing a blank on your name because I can't see all the names, and I've just met all of you. Nancy, what Nancy just said is exactly right, because they didn't just do the film. The film was the draw, but they built whitewater rafting and horseback riding and hiking trails and all that kind of stuff. So the movie might have been the draw, but then there was all this other stuff to do while you were there. So I think this is great. And I was listening to either Matthew or whoever was before that, Chris, I think, was before that. You have the museum, visitor center, restaurant. That's the landing pad. And then here's all the other things you could do from there. So I love this. This is great.
Scott?
I have a question for everybody. What's the interest level of 8 to 12-year-olds these days? That's part of your market.
My kids would live at Old Tucson if they could, and they're in that range.
You're biased. Now, and the rest of you folks, I understand about the hiking and all the rest of it. I have a 47-year-old triathlon daughter and all that. But what about the 8 to 12, 8 to 14-year-olds? I mean, it's a sincere question. I have grandchildren, but I don't know what the heck they're interested in all half the time, other than sports. So what's the draw, and can we supply it?
No, it's a great question, because those are, people that will visit, or parents always say, we went there because the kids requested it, because they enjoyed it. So I think that's another element we need to look at, is the younger people that would attend, and also the millennials and people moving to town with new jobs that are saying, what do we do? Where do we go? What's there? So there may be a multi-generational approach, and how do we engage kids, and how do we let them be interested in what is there? Carmine?
Yeah, to Scott's point, I mean, maybe, there are partnerships that can be formed, right? So with local organizations, so you've got the Tucson Children's Museum, right? And who better to, maybe get some insight into what younger kids are into, and could you have a satellite location out there, right? So it doesn't have to, be, it doesn't have to be a lift by one particular entity. If you can leverage really the knowledge and the skill and strength of different partners, you can incorporate. I mean, there's a lot of buildings out there, or there's a lot of facades that, right, could host buildings on the back end, but could you have something there that's really geared towards that younger demographic? And I know as we're talking about the next stages out at the Kino complex and the sports and entertainment district out there, we're talking about how do you entertain families who are traveling for sports tourism. And, it may or may not be, right, a little bit of a hike for them to get out there with a busy tournament schedule. But if they were, compelled to maybe program another day into their trip, right, at the back end. So we've got a tournament that's going to take place out at Kino, and that's going to run a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? Are there enough interesting things in proximity that they would book a Monday and, go spend it out there? So I think leveraging, right, the multitude of different venues that we have out here, and partnering with people who, are in town already that have expertise in areas, geared towards different demographics.
Yeah. One of the interesting comments I got was astronomy. Why don't we have something for dark skies or telescopes, or a place for people to go, and that area is dark at night and it would be perfect? And I thought, oh, all right, that's a good idea. Reading.
Well, I want to go back to Scott's comment about the 8 to 14-year-old generation there. And I've been out there a couple years when, Chris, we have the school groups that come out there. And once they get out there, I'm sure, okay, it's the day off from school, but what the heck. But once they get out there, they really have a good time going around to all the different exhibits and looking at everything there. And, Brent kind of jumped off to go to another meeting, but the days of when you, and those of you that have kids, when you went to a tournament, and at one point, like you mentioned, there was a social event, that would be a huge tie-in. I mean, if there's a soccer tournament going on, or baseball, and we can say, hey, Saturday night play stops at 6 o'clock and you're all going to go out to Old Tucson, that ties that whole thing in there. I happen to live out that way, and we all were wonderfully thankful when the casino moved in out there, because we got a few restaurants. And now it's become a huge attraction for the region, which is great. But it would be nice if there was a couple different restaurants out there where you could go for a nice meal on a weekend. Yeah, we have Tiny's at Ajo and Kinney, but you know, it's not what you'd really want to go to for a grown-up date night. So, you know, I think, you know, reinventing it is exactly, you know, making Old Tucson new again, because, you know, Nancy, I think you said it. When I first started out here, people were like, all of this is out here. They just saw what sat on the corner of Ajo and Forges, the baseball stadium, and they didn't know we had this parking lot to be used, and we didn't have the auxiliary fields. And, you know, I can think of about a half a dozen events right now that I could potentially move over into space at Old Tucson, because my space is being used as a COVID testing site. And so, you know, I think that it's that outreach that whoever does this is going to have to do, is, you know, to reel people in to say, you know, we're here and we're not really that far out, because it's not. I mean, you don't have to go Gates Pass. You can go Ajo to Kinney and you're there in like, you know, 20 minutes. So it's not that big a deal. So.
And I keep reminding people, because we've been since January with COVID and closures and new procedures and how do we safely operate. This too, I've been guaranteed by the doctors pass. And we will return to being able to do larger scale events. And we'll have life after COVID. So we need to think in terms of, this is what it is now, but it may change in the future, and what would that look like? Carmine?
Diane, when you said, you know, the astronomical community, I know that at some of our parks, Chris can comment greater, we've hosted stargazing events.
Yeah.
So that's it. And then it reminded me when our kids were young, right, to Scott's point about what are kids interested in. I remember out in Tucson Mountain Park somewhere, I don't know exactly where, but there used to be, it was like a Harvest Moon festival, right? And it was, I don't know, it was somewhere in like a pull-out parking area, and they had docents, and they would talk to the kids, right, about bats, and they'd have snakes and, right, tarantulas and, you know, different stuff like that. They'd have, you know, native desert wildlife, but it was around the harvest moon, right? The moving into the fall season. So things, again, seasonally focused, but that aren't, you know, high impact activities. They could be more passive and more interactive type of stuff around a whole docent thing, right? Again, talking about partnering with entities, right? Could you get Desert Museum to host something at Old Tucson that was around, you know, the change in the season, and they would have docents and, you know, things like that. Kettle corn, you got to bring kettle corn out there too.
I can see it now. What came out of this meeting? Kettle corn. We need kettle corn. Well, I'm any
I was
other?
just going to say, can I just jump in a sec, Di?
Sure.
Just to add on to what Carmine was saying, I think a partnership there is really, really important within the Tucson Mountain Park, not only beyond Tucson Mountain Park, but within, because the Desert Museum has had the same issue. I know, talking about trying to get, they're more focused on getting the tweens interested, those people. So, I mean, kids are extremely interested in the Desert Museum up to a certain age. I'm not sure what that age is these days. And the parents are interested in educating their kids and bringing them to the museum. And some of the older folks are still interested in the Desert Museum and some of those kind of things. But how is there an element of compatibility that we develop with Old Tucson and the Desert Museum, and having Gilbert Ray Campground even across the way? Because there's, I think, an opportunity for all three of those things to work together, for whether it's events or activities, you know, or what Scott was talking about, the 8 to 14-year-olds. There's an element maybe on the lower end to bring, you know, for people for the Desert Museum, for that element in there. But then you get into that mid-range thing. So maybe a partnership with the Desert Museum. They've talked about glamping and developing a glamping operation out there before. You know, Gilbert Ray, we have 30 amp electrical service that's provided to all our 130 campsites out there. So, you know, we have more rustic camping, we have more boondocking opportunities, those kind of things. But we also have a greater opportunity for bringing electrical service or something like that with a higher end $250,000 RVs. Now, granted, you've got some other folks in other places in the area that might appeal to some of those folks, but I think the key thing is within Tucson Mountain Park, we have multiple gems that need to really work together, you know, as part of any plan in Tucson Mountain Park.
Okay. And I should mention Craig Avante, the CEO of Desert Museum, was asked to be on this committee and accepted and is very much a part of it, and we'll watch the video after. However, he had a conflict today that he couldn't attend. So we'll make sure he sees the video and then responds to the information that he's seen here. Terry?
I just wanted to mention too, you know, Matt has a child within that demographic age group, and he made a great comment, and I asked him to raise his hand, but I just wanted to have Matt chime in too. He suggested, what about a partnership with U of A regarding, you know, the observatory, U of A recreation, adventuring clubs, ropes challenge courses. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity, as well as some of the nighttime activities. You know, I remember going out to Desert Museum, and I've done that several times in the nighttime events where it's cooler during the evening and have all sorts of activities that you can participate in. So that's another opportunity, I think. Matt, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll tag on to that. I do have just went from a preteen to a teen. And so, you know, having something interactive and, you know, that is visually appealing to them. And one of the other thoughts I had was something along like a challenge course, a ropes or climbing, you know, being able to explore that nature aspect, but really dive in and just be adventurous in that area. So,
Scott?
Another factor that we haven't really talked about is there's no real focal point of Arizona history. I write a column for like 20 some newspapers. It's all mostly half of it's Western history and half of that's Arizona history. I've been doing this for 11 years and I got enough material. I could do it for another 21 years. And the point is, they're still paying me. So people must enjoy this. It's not my great literary skills. They like history. And if you can incorporate that in all this too, it doesn't have to be movies. And I understand it's the cart before the horse, but you have to make money to sustain it before you can venture off into something that's going to be grand. But Arizona history is awfully important. And I think that has to be incorporated as well.
Good point. Yeah. Any other comments or suggestions, or I want to be respectful of your time, Daryl?
So, you know, again, you guys are all on the right track and listening to, you know, Terry and Matt, and, you know, my kids like to touch animals. So having the Desert Sonora Museum do something out there would be stellar. You know, you've got all the other museums in town. You've got even that, what is that called? The Time Machine Museum. We went there last year. My kids I couldn't drag them out. We were like there from opening until they were literally closing the doors when they were shipping us out. So I think partnering with all these things is brilliant. U of A, observatory stuff. We did what was it, Kirk, the monkey run? I don't know. The medallion has a monkey on it. We were crawling through tubes and ropes and jumping and flying through mud, and it was great.
Yeah, that's the mud run. We've had a couple of those, and kids, adults, and everybody participate, and it's great. It's a great time for everybody.
I'm not even a runner, Kirk, and I did it 3 times. I'm a swimmer, but I still.
Good for you. I'd probably break in half if I did it. But anytime the kids get out here, you guys are right. They just want to be involved in hands-on and activities that they can do instead of just standing around. And to Scott's point, even the young kids, when the historians are talking, the kids are listening. They're getting it. You know what I mean? So yeah, kids involvement, I think, is a big focus that we're missing. I mean, we do a lot for the kids out here, but I think we can do a lot more and on a daily basis. So.
I was thinking like a STEM, like the statewide STEM competition using only 1800s tech. I mean, that would be something, wouldn't it, for kids? You know, build a well, you can't build a spaceship, but build a telescope using 1800s knowledge and technology or something. I mean, something fun.
And I do love the telescope thing. I mean, that's awesome. That would be great out here. Like you said, it's dark, it's quiet. You know, people would come out, especially because it's an evening event where it's cooler. So
Great. Well, we're certainly not lacking for ideas and I think a good thought process. This is just the beginning. We are looking at scheduling our next meeting the week of November 10th, I think. I need to check some schedules and then we'll get something out to you. And as I mentioned, we're recording this meeting, and since there is so much interest, we'll certainly put it online and I'll send you the link to where that can be found. It's an open discussion. We're taking all comments and we'll see where this leads us. And we'll continue to have these conversations and best thoughts and any restrictions we might have or any possibilities that we may come up with. So does that sound good to everybody? Any other comments? I appreciate your time today and your knowledge and your information. Daryl, did you have a final comment?
I just had one quick question. Is there maybe a way to break up into smaller, I don't know, like focus groups where, you know, like Scott and I could focus on the film part with Kirk, and then somebody else could do the partnerships with the other museums and just kind of start talking to some of these potential partners? Is there a way to like have like subcommittees, if you will? I don't know what the word is.
We can certainly, as I said, we can certainly put together some ad hoc committees at the direction of Mr. Huckleberry that may focus on a specific aspect. When he was looking at putting the committee together and getting input, you can see that he was looking at the cultural aspects, the film history, the Western history, all of those things. So we can certainly look at that and including more people. Scott, did you have another comment? I'm sorry. I closed your mic, so you may need to open it.
I just wanted to thank you for your leadership. I think you've done a grand job and it's a good first start.
Yeah, thanks, Diane.
I think it's a good starting point. As I said, I will follow up with you with the link. Don't be surprised we've been getting some press calls. Who's on the committee and why are they on the committee and what's their name? And we've released that. That's fine. Here's the committee. So you may get calls or information or a follow-up, and you can certainly refer them to this link when I give it to you, or speak to them in terms of we're deciding what's best for the property and what's best for Pima County residents and hopefully for tourists that will be honored, will be able to honor everything. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Diane. And we direct people to you, right, if they have questions?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And then we'll keep them all in a list.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much.